Welcome to the first Investment Committee update for 2024. My name's Mark Wenzel. I'm Chairman of the Hopkins Group Investment Committee. The committee meeting this month was pretty positive. The performance of the portfolio in December and obviously into January has been really strong on the back of really strong markets, and some of the changes we made in November have resulted in really good performance for the portfolios in general. But I'll touch on that later. But I'll quickly talk about the economic circumstances which are prevailing and which has given confidence to the markets across the globe. Largely, the markets are expecting that the Federal Reserve and the Reserve Bank of Australia have reached peak interest rates, and it's just a matter of time until they start cutting rates. And this has sort of been reinforced on a number of measures. Clearly, inflation's starting to come down in the US. Inflation's starting to come down in Australia. Retail sales in Australia in December were relatively weak, which is really what the Reserve Bank wants to see in order to start cutting rates. And while we don't necessarily expect rates to be cut anytime soon, perhaps towards the middle of the year in the US, later in the year in Australia, we're starting to believe that interest rates have peaked and that they're going to start to cut them in the coming months. We talked about US earnings season, which saw, some relatively, benign conditions in regards to the numbers, but there were some really good positives in that companies like Johnson & Johnson reported well, airlines reported well, Microsoft reported strong revenue, even though costs were up on the back of AI, and Google again, reported really strong growth in revenue, which from our point of view just sort of indicates that markets are going to be relatively strong and that they're not necessarily overpriced, not going to see any big falls on the back of economics the way things are looking at the moment, unless there's a significant change. In regards to the portfolios, again, we had a really strong December, and we've seen that flow through to January, but really the discussion was around the December year end, and we saw really strong performance of international real estate investments trusts, which rose really strongly. We saw really strong growth in the international markets, particularly, as I mentioned, sort of around those technology names, the Magnificent Seven, and we saw really good performance here in Australia as well with regards to the banking sector, which performed really strongly. Some of the energy stocks performed strongly, which has resulted in really good performance out of the portfolio for the end of the financial year. You'll get a report on the actual numbers, but really just to report that some of the changes we made, we increased the exposure to small caps and mid caps, both in Australia and international, which had a really strong end to the financial end of the year, into the calendar year, which again, just sort of highlights that, that I think the changes that we're making are really providing some really strong benefits to you as investors within the MDA. So thank you for listening, and we look forward to giving you an update next month.